Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to today's webinar, Smart Integration Technology for J.D. Edwards. My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a Senior Vice President here at Magic Software Enterprises Americas, and I'm joined today by Ryan Beck, a Senior Consultant at Magic Software. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Glenn.
And welcome to all of you on the webinar. We appreciate your attendance today, and we're looking forward to a great session. We have a demonstration planned, so we hope that you'll stay tuned for that and an introductory presentation. We would invite you to ask questions at any time by typing them into the chat box or the question box, send them to the host and presenter. We'll be happy to try to answer those, as many as possible, at the conclusion of the formal presentation. So go ahead and enter those in at any time as the questions occur to you. We would encourage you to do that. So let's go ahead and begin. Today's topic of smart integration technology for J.D. Edwards is one that is well known to us at Magic Software. This is a core emphasis for our organization. We are actually platinum sponsors of the Quest International Users Group, which most of you are familiar with as the users community for Oracle J.D. Edwards, and we're very pleased to participate in that now for just about 10 years, I think it's been. And we also are very involved, of course, as Oracle partners and have achieved Oracle Gold partner status here in the United States and Oracle Platinum partner status globally. So we are pleased to be participating with many of you as customers who are already on the call, and those of you who are looking into this integration technology, we welcome you. Magic Software is a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol MGIC, and so is known for its 30 years of experience in a variety of different countries. We have offices in about 10 different countries and actually customers in over 50 countries around the world. Our technology focuses on the business needs of an organization, but is really designed to be used by team members in your IT department to provide the capability for applications and integration. So on today's topic, there's a lot of buzzwords, SOA, SCA, ESB, EDA, ESA, blah, blah, and the guy responds and says, well, great, and what about the RRI? And the guy says, don't bother me with buzzwords, So we remember that when we talk about technology, there are a lot of technical terms, and there should be, that need to be discussed and presented, but at the same time there's a business reason for doing all this, and so we'll try to keep those in balance in today's webinar, but we definitely want to show you a live working demonstration of J.D. Edwards integration, and we believe that the solution that we are showing here today is indeed the best on the market, a great solution for any business that is looking to cost-effectively enhance their business processes by automating data transformation and exchange and orchestration of business process workflow between applications and people in their organization. So unfortunately, a lot of people are engaged in what we would call point-to-point integration efforts, where they're manually writing programs in RPG or other languages, Java and so on, that are a point-to-point fragile piece of integration. And as you look at the number of enterprise systems that you have in your environment, the number of point-to-point integration programs that have to be maintained can really grow out of hand very easily. If you have 10 systems, then you're looking at 45 point-to-point connections that are needed. So many of you have far more systems than that in place. Not all of them necessarily are integrated each to one another, but nevertheless, regardless of where those lines are drawn, there are a lot of them, and that also creates a point of resistance to normal automated business processes when you know that you have to write that manual code. That can become a barrier to really doing things the right way in a seamless fashion between applications, as opposed opposed to resorting to manual processes or even, batch jobs when something real-time would be more effective, that type of thing. So point-to-point integration efforts are something to be avoided if possible, and today's webinar will show you how working with J.D. Edwards and its open APIs that you can actually automate all of this in a really fantastic way. And so this is going to use a principle that we call loosely coupled integration, meaning that it isn't written point-to-point, but rather you have integration platform that allows you to have a connectivity to the platform using pre-built capabilities, components, and so forth. And so for your ERP systems, the integration typically is internal, right? It's a modular system. It's a system that is integrated in and of itself, right? But when it comes time to integrate to something outside of the system, let's say Agile PLM, for example, then there is integration that's required, and this can be done through something like an integration platform or an integration hub or an enterprise service bus. CRM has already integrated sales automation and marketing capabilities. It even has sometimes, extended applications that connect to it. But here again, if it needs to connect with e-commerce, that's typically going to need to be done in a way that would ideally be handled by an integration platform as opposed to creating point-to-point integration. So loosely coupled integration means that all of your enterprise systems can interface with through an integration paradigm that allows you not to have to write direct, platform-to-platform integration, but instead be able to go through some sort of intermediary or intermediation that is handled by a platform or a bus. Now, hub and spoke, of course, implies a platform, and this is very common amongst middleware solutions and is a very solid solution. Bus architecture is also something that people look to in order to provide them with a way of integrating. The reality is that some combination of the two we believe is often best, so that you can have things in the cloud, for example, that are simply integrating via services that they're able to call, more of a bus-style approach, and then you might have the integration between different systems in the enterprise, behind the firewall, and that's often best handled by some sort of integration middleware platform. So you need to assess your application portfolio. Look at what you have, what connectors and components are available by the various systems, and what's going to be required and needed. So you have not only your ERP system in J.D. Edwards, but you may have operational systems, manufacturing systems, specialized order processing systems, perhaps. We have many customers with those. And then, of course, your other sorts of specialized systems for human resource management, customer relationship management, supply chain management, logistics, warehousing, product lifecycle management, your e-commerce or m-commerce platforms, and your general email and productivity apps, things like SharePoint, and on and on. So there are a variety of different enterprise software systems that all of us tend to have in place in our organizations, and we find a need to assess them and to look at where the integration touch points need to be in order to have seamless business processes. So the considerations that go into an integration project are things like, is there user interaction involved? Is the user waiting for the result of this integration, or is it simply a background process that can take place perhaps on a batch or scheduled basis, and the timing of it isn't as important? Is this basically just a request for information, need to view something, or are we actually processing a part of a transaction? Is this a step in the transaction processing? Does it need to take place on a synchronous basis where we actually keep the connection live and open, or is it asynchronous where a short burst of communication can take place, then we wait for some other sort of communication to take place. Is it short-lived or long-running? You know, there is a difference. You can have a lot of asynchronous communications taking place very quickly, and the result to the user may appear to be real-time. It's actually what we would call near real-time because it wasn't truly synchronous. And that would be a short-lived process, obviously. But there are long-running processes that are just as important, where you might be waiting for the approval of maybe the CEO on a purchase order, you know, above you know, $100,000 or something like that. And so that kind of a wait, in a process, by its very nature, creates a long-running process where you need to have then some other alternate business processes put in place for what happens if you don't get the response in a timely manner. You may need alarms, alerts, escalations, things of this nature. They're also built into that process. You need to consider the geographic span of your integration. Is everything in one data center? Are you integrating with the cloud? Are you integrating with other data centers around the world or the U.S.? What's the situation? Will the business processes need to be re-engineered? Is there some improvement that can be had by actually not just integrating, but really re-engineering the business process? And then we need to consider, you know, what is the scope of this integration project? Or, you know, it's always wise, we believe, to do things incrementally, to have small victories and wins and add to them, as opposed to trying to have this massive scope right at the outset in one's first project and almost anything. I think that typically makes sense. And then, of course, you know, in doing your integration, you're going to be doing the gap analysis, looking at the APIs that are in place, what you have to do to work with them, what middleware do you have in place to handle all of that, what staff resources do you have, do you need to work with a business partner, with a software vendor to provide services, or do you want to get training for your internal resources, you know, have supplemental consultants? What's the approach that's going to be taken in all this? So JD Edwards, the good news is, has an API. I think most on the call are probably familiar with this, and of course we need to distinguish between JD Edwards World and Enterprise One, and we need to distinguish between versions of each, because the scenarios are quite different, obviously, depending upon which tools release you're on and which version you're on. But in general, we can suggest that JD Edwards World A7.3 and above has Z files and processes available to it, which we understand to be a proprietary flat file format. This basically gives you a way in and out. And it's a very widespread approach used across JD Edwards. In other words, a lot of different table structures are supported by the input and output, and the processing that takes place is often more than just importing data, but it's actually running a process that is transacting information and not just inputting information. With JD Edwards World in the 9s, there's some business services support as well as the Z-file process support available to you. So you sort of have some options there. And you know, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but Magic Software's component obviously supports all of these versions, and that's great, because what that means is that if you're currently on an older version, although we encourage you to upgrade just as Oracle would, we would suggest that by getting your integration in place now, the forward migration to the new version is really made a lot easier, because your integration keeps running. And we have a number of customers that we can refer to you that will tell you, yes, we installed the Magic XPI integration platform back in the old days when it was still called iBolt, and it's still, the day that we went live, it took 5 minutes to change where we were pointing the integration, and it kept working. We didn't have to change anything. So that's an exciting thing when you're upgrading, to be able to have an integration platform that just, you know, doesn't miss a beat. And again, that's due to that loose coupling. That's really what's at work there in part, and also the fact, of course, that the design of the API for JD Edwards is very robust, and it's designed to survive versions as well. So this is very powerful. Then when we look at JD Edwards Enterprise One's API, of course, it's a different world. We're now talking about business functions. The Z files and processes are still there, but we have a much more robust service-oriented manner for interacting with Enterprise One, and that's exciting. It's similar to the the service orientation of World in the 9s. But with Enterprise One, since versions in 8.1 and forward, we've really had business functions. So business functions are a powerful way for us to interact. So what do we prefer? Well, with Enterprise One, you're going to want to look for a connector in your middleware portfolio that supports those business functions. How? By being able to refresh the business function list. That's very important because a lot of you are creating custom table structures and adding new fields and so forth. And so the business function list needs to be able to be refreshed so that all of that is at your fingertips in the Integration Studio environment, so that you can drag and drop between even your custom fields and tables and so on. You need to also be able to run a sequence of business functions as part of a transaction, and so you want to look for that capability. With JD Edwards World, you're going to want that breadth of coverage so that you have support for Z processes and flat files and services and so on, so that you have all of the things that you need for the widest possible array of integration approaches and methodologies for JD Edwards World. Now, the platform overall that you select should obviously support business functions. It should support the ability to transform, format, and transport XML. XML has become a lingua franca for many modern business processes, although there are a lot of things out there that are not XML-based. But you certainly want to get that XML capability. You also want to be able to composite application logic. So by that, we don't mean writing necessarily new programs and sitting down and writing new code, but the ability to simply call an RPG program and pass a variable to it and get a result, or interact with COBOL or an IBM environment operating system command language, or a Java class or Java object, or even in the .NET world, to be able to work with C# and C, C++, and COM, and all of these things can be important. You also want to just have basic monitoring capabilities, looking for text files that appear in a directory, being able to parse them, perform basic CRUD operations on text files, because not everything that has been created has been designed with a beautiful business function on top of it. And I'm talking about the third-party things that you'll need to integrate that are outside of JD Edwards. And so having some of these basic processing capabilities that are simplified in a platform are really powerful. That platform should also give you the ability to model your business processes so that you can visualize for your business users and your other IT decision makers exactly what the new proposed future state business process will be. You want to be able to orchestrate those business processes, which means actually execute what you told them you're going to do in the model. You want to be able to have both real-time and asynchronous and scheduled business processes being orchestrated. You want to be able to do the data mapping and transformation, which I know Ryan's going to show us, business process monitoring so that you can see what's happening in the background as your business processes are running, what's the average time of execution, how many errors were there, what's the actual steps that were taken. A log for audit purposes is very powerful. You want to be able to be compliant with security standards, not only being able to deploy behind the firewall, but also being able to do the things like encryption and decryption and user rights management and user authentication and those kinds of things, either through LDAP or Active Directory or some other kind of approaches. You want enterprise-grade scalability so that as the number of transactions increases, the integration platform can keep right up with it. Now, the way Magic does that is through the use of in-memory computing. So we actually have a data grid, which is in memory, which is foundational to our entire messaging infrastructure for our integration platform. It's very powerful, very advanced, and gives you the kind of processing times that support elastic scalability. Now, you also want to look for that SOA compliance, that ability to take a process that might span 2 or 3 applications and expose that as a web service, or the ability to consume web services from third parties or from other applications within the enterprise application portfolio and utilize them as part of your business process. So the service exposure and service use goes in 2 directions. And then obviously in today's environment, not only is cloud integration important, but mobile integration is becoming a hugely important topic. The ability to work with Apple and Android and BlackBerry and Windows and find ways to not only integrate, but also even to create new applications that might do new custom functions can be very important. So looking for solutions that can provide all of these things is what we recommend. So with in-memory computing, you have something that you might call space-based architecture. Now, by that we mean that you have elastic partitioning and the ability to dynamically scale your environment. So you do that by co-locating memory and processing in a space. That's why we call it space-based architecture. So you have multiple spaces that are out there in a grid, if you will, and that grid then provides you with scale. It also provides you with redundancy for high availability. So the co-location of memory and processing is a key to in-memory computing, and also the principle of write behind, because with memory actually replacing disk storage for the purpose of the transaction, so that disk storage now becomes an archival process as opposed to a part of the transaction, you actually have an accelerated execution time or process time in which you have a response of a process being complete and returning any result that might be expected by the other application. So those response times are accelerated because you do not have to perform them to disk. You perform them in memory, and we all know just that the response times of memory are obviously much faster than they are to disk. So the SQL database becomes part of a data tier which provides persistency and archival capabilities, but is not mandatory to the execution of the process itself. And so the result of that is this high availability, high performance, linear scalability that everyone's looking for when they talk about in-memory computing today. And we're very proud of the fact that we have had that built into our products now for over 2 years. So with the capability of an integration platform comes concern for security, as it well should, because when you start integrating, bringing data into JD Edwards or taking information out of JD Edwards, the concern is, are those other environments secure, and is the information being handled and transported and stored in a secure fashion? What are the user rights of those who are requesting the information or those who are passing information to the system? It can be critical both ways. So user authentication needs to be built in to the environment for integration. The ability to understand and manage user rights is an important consideration in your business processes that you implement for integration, as is, of course, the ability to decipher, to encrypt and decrypt data that is being moved from application to application. You don't want to do it in a flat text file that is unencrypted, particularly in an environment which is subject to scrutiny for its security. So you can use a variety of different options for encryption. Magic Software's XPI integration platform supports all of the encryption methods that you see listed here. Just understand that there are processing times involved with any encryption or decryption process or step, and so you want to, in high volume environments, you want to take that into consideration and ask yourself, how high a level of security is required here. There are differences. Some of these, are harder to crack than others, and so, but they have overhead. They take longer to encrypt or decrypt. So you want to compare and decide what's really appropriate for your environment. Do we have to go to extreme measures of security, or is normal prudent security enough for our type of business process, and the sensitivity of the information involved? Your call on that, obviously, as to what's important, as well as the call sometimes of auditors and others who might be consulting you on such matters. The great thing is that you have the flexibility to do that in an integration platform like the Magic Integration Platform. Auditing is also something we bring up when we talk about security, and as we suggested, you need to be able to have that audit trail of what's happened in your integration process so that people can come in after the fact and see what the source of the information was on any particular transaction, which application, what date and timestamp, user credentials, whatever it might be that you're storing for that business process. And then see exactly which data was transferred and be able to see, that it was transferred successfully and so on. So all of that information can be specified for your logging capabilities, and you have an audit trail there that provides traceability. It's also very useful when you're designing the business processes and determining, how you want to work through all these things. Having that log can also be useful for reasons beyond security, but simply from a development standpoint. So it kind of has a dual functionality. So we're getting close to the time when we're going to start our demonstration. Just before we do that, I want to point out that Magic Software offers both the integration platform, the Magic XPI integration platform that has the J.D. Edwards component we've been talking about, and an application platform that's paired with Magic XPI that provides you with that ability to create your mobile applications and other kinds of web applications and client-server apps that you might need. So you have a toolkit available to do all of that when you get the Magic XPI integration platform, and that's, I think, of value as well, because there's a common expression language between the two. There's a lot of where you just kind of learn once and both systems. There's some commonality to that, and that's of course very useful. And what they both have in common is that they're metadata-driven solutions, so that you're really leveraging underlying capabilities of the platform rather than recreating the wheel and writing something new for the first time. So the integration capabilities that are provided with the Magic XPI integration platform include literally dozens of components and methods and wizards and services, and it's well over 100 of all of these things combined, various databases that are supported and so on. So these pre-built adapters and resources mean that you don't have to write line-by-line code. You're instead working in the visual integration design studio that Ryan's going to show you. It allows you to extend your ERP system to simplify development and maintenance of the integration to these third-party applications in a very powerful way, as well as supporting those mobile apps that you might want to have working with J.D. Edwards. We know that there are some great mobile apps available directly from Oracle, but there are other business requirements you may have that lie outside of that current list of mobile apps from Oracle, and so we would encourage you to look at the Magic solution for those requirements that you may have in your organization, as we think it's going to make your life a lot easier down the road. So with sort of that introduction, what I'd like to do then at this point is pass the ball over to Ryan. When I do that, Ryan's going to be able to share his desktop with us, and we'll be able to see his demonstration of the Magic XPI integration platform for J.D. Edwards. So Ryan, it looks like you're getting ready to share your desktop there. How you doing? Ah, I see J.D. Edwards. You must be there, Ryan.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Glenn. All right, so what I've got in store for everybody here is we're going to do a live demonstration of using Magic XPI to connect J.D. Edwards, Enterprise 1 this time, with some other applications. We could do World, but I just kind of did a roll of the dice and I ended up picking E1. So the scenario here is I want to be able to get new accounts that come in from my salespeople into my customer master here in E1. We have a lot of, and this is kind of like usually some sort of dependency for any other thing else you want to do. Like if you want to do sales order integrations or you want to do purchase orders, usually things that you start with are the basics, like your item master and your customer master, because they're usually dependencies of higher level transactions. But if we just want to get a new customer in here, so let's come up with a name. I don't know, the iPhone 6 is getting announced today, so let's say iPhone is a new company, and let's see if we can find it. Okay, so we don't have any company named iPhone. So what I'm going to do is instead of typing in here in Borinium, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Salesforce, and I'm going to enter in a new contact here, or actually a new customer. So I'll say create new account. I know now everybody's switching to get off this webinar and read about the iPhone, I'm sure, but let's go ahead and put that in here, and we'll give them a phone number. All right, and I am going to pick. Like I said, we can go to several different systems. Magic has got a decision in there where it's going to send it, and it's based on this drop down here. You could have this or not. And I just said that we were going to be able to have the demo work with multiple systems, and in this case, we'll pick E1. So then what I'm going to do is go ahead and put in a fake address or something. I don't know what their zip code is, but that looks close enough. And I'm going to save it. Before I save it, by the way, you will notice that the JDE ID here is blank, and it was in the synced flag is actually going to be left empty. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. What will happen is after a couple seconds, Magic XPI is going to realize that I've created a new record in Salesforce, and then it's going to pick up the data, transform it, and load it into JD Edwards using a business function. And the business function is basically a C program that exists on the JD Edwards environment that sits behind every screen that you have there. So whenever you click Save on a screen in JDE, it runs a business function. Well, we can run those same functions here programmatically from the integration engine. So it does all the same data validation, and it'll create this record in all the correct tables, because there's about 3 or 4 different tables it's going to have to go to. And it also assigns the next address book record. So I refreshed my screen. I do see that a JDE address book ID was returned. It just picked the next one available. You'll also see down at the bottom, I created it at 10:32 local, and about within the next minute, it was actually modified by another user called Magic XPI. That's the service account that our Magic server is running at. So I'm pretty confident if I switch back and do a search here, I'll find our new record. I can select it, go in and do it. You'll see when I open it, there's no red text that says, this is a bad record or there's data missing. That's because all the same data validation is run through the business functions that I called as when you save it through the interface. So essentially, then it's validating things like, is it a duplicate account? Is the state code valid? Is the country valid? Stuff like that. So we now see everything I typed from the Salesforce side put in here, of course, saving duplicate input and creating a real-time sync. And this is just a really, really simple integration to show you kind of the things you can do and something that people might do. So the point here is it is a transparent field. You saw Salesforce, you saw JD Edwards. There was no button I had to push. There's nothing I had to do outside of just typing stuff into Salesforce.com to make this work. And that's the idea. Magic XPI resides as a Windows process that runs on a VM somewhere in your environment, and it just orchestrates data from your different systems. And the users don't need to know it exists or how it works. They know that data pops up where it should. And that's important because it's much easier to deploy and manage. You don't have to worry about software on everybody's machine. You don't have to worry about their Salesforce token or account or password. None of that. It's all centrally managed and orchestrated from one machine that has one account that logs into Salesforce, typically one account that logs into JDE, depending on what roles you want to use. The question then becomes, what's the, is that all it can do? What else can it do? How can I customize that for my environment? So the answer is that the tool is very customizable. I'm going to go behind the scenes and show you something that the developer would see. This is not something the end user would not ever see, but the developer would. And this is where we create the metadata of your project that says how it should run, what databases and applications is it connecting to, and when is it moving data from one side to the other. It's a visual design environment, as you can see right away. It's got pretty icons and stuff, as you can tell. These are called components. These icons over here in the bottom left are called components. And what these are basically gateways and adapters that go into other systems, kind of like building Lego blocks to make something. You might have a special block that does, gives you a special capability. Well, that's what the JD Edwards component does. So as I build the right side of my screen, which is called the flow, I use these components as my building blocks. So if I want to call a business function in Edwards, maybe I want to do a sales order. So I would just kind of drag the component over from the left to the right. You just kind of watch. I do a quick drag and hold and drop it, and hit configuration. And then what it's going to do is it's actually going to log into my JD Edwards server and retrieve a list of all the business functions out there that are available. That means that it doesn't. We actually support any and every business function on your server, whether it's a stock one, whether you modified it, whether it was just one that you created from scratch. If you had one of your developers write it, so we basically browse these are called the DLLs, and these are called the modules, or the actual C programs, and then I can just go into one and grab what I want. So what did I say? Sales orders? Okay, let's do sales. So if I did, and then there it is. I'll go dig into there, and maybe I want to edit a sales order, so I'll say get and grab the business function here. That's the actual level I was after. I wanted to get the F4211 edit doc, and then I'll say OK. And what happens now is it's going to download the parameters for that business function, and I can see all the variables I can pass in, like order total and type and company. Of course, header information like the sales order number and company, and also other details like what what do I want to be on that sales order line. The nice thing about this, by the way, is that the parameters we see are not like working with Z-tables where it's very cryptic, where it just says SZ, AUDS, or whatever. It's going to actually say an English name of the parameter you're trying to work with. So it's definitely more intuitive to work with, easier, and you can see the data types. So anything that says MN is a number, or anything that says SC a mapper. Well, you'll notice there's a left side over here that's also white. This allows me to bring any other data source in I want, like a database or an application, or hey, say Salesforce.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the component I already configured, because that just saves us a little bit of time. And this one's calling our address book master business function. And this is already mapped because we did this previously. And what we've got is on the left we have our Salesforce schema that it discovered, which it did on the fly. If I added a new column, you would see it added. You can see we have these _C ones. So it's reading the custom columns from the Salesforce org. And then I'm mapping it over into the business function like this. So you can see right now we didn't map address to. So maybe we want to get address to in there. Well, let's do that. So if I go back to Salesforce, let's look at where address to came from. Do an edit. Let's see. Address to in here is actually just like a line return. So if I want to say STE1234, I could put that on both sides. But I don't want, let's see here, I want to separate that. So I would just do a simple expression to take the first half of it into line 1, the second half into line 2. So it would kind of look like this. And we have a very powerful expression let's call it the library of things you can do. And it kind of borrows a lot of the functions from things like SQL and other types of databases. So you'll kind of be right at home knowing what they are. And I guess I want to say, I'm going to limit that by 10. Char 10 is a line return. So this would give me basically token 1 of line returns, and this would give me token 2 of line returns. And then what you see now, I'll change that to a 2. So what would happen is, very simply, you would take that data from the billing street and split it into half. Half goes into line 1, half goes into line 2. And I know it's going to do that because there's this little FX here. This little FX says I'm changing the data on the fly as it goes across. It's not a one-to-one mapping. You can see one-to-one mappings here, like with city. You can see city just copies straight over. Whatever I have in the source goes right to the destination. Other stuff will have an FX, so you'll see that happen. So there's a lot of other things we can do too. We can go and do lookups against other tables. Sometimes you might have more than 2 applications in integration. Maybe you want to grab, who knows? I've seen people grab data off of, say, SharePoint, and then go look up something in Salesforce, and then deliver it as data to JD Edwards. So you can go all over the place. All of our components can communicate with our other components, which is very important. The components themselves, remember what I said they do earlier, they're a gateway into the other system. Well, they give us 2 things. Well, more than 2 things, but they all at least do this. They all give us connectivity to the system we want to talk to. So the JD Edwards component knows how to call business functions in E1, and Salesforce knows how to connect to Salesforce using an account. And then it also gives us the basically the ability to I want to say understand the schema of the thing. So for instance, if I wanted to work with Salesforce, I drag a component over, just like the other one was able to look up business functions. This will browse and find all of the objects that exist. So you might have all your stock objects. All your objects in Salesforce are supported. You see accounts and contacts and cases and whatnot. But you'll also see occasionally any custom objects we made. You see the underscore C there. That's a telltale. That's a custom object. So it's able to go in and dynamically figure out how to do that. So so we could have connected to things like Salesforce using our web services connector, which is more generic and connect to any web service. But the point of the Salesforce adapter is that it's able to understand the actual schema behind your organization and read those and basically know that it's not just a web service, it's a Salesforce web service. On the JDE side, of course, the E1, the component, is calling business functions, as we said earlier, and we showed you how we browse them. The world component is actually quite interesting. It is not. There's no business functions in world. Anything from we can support everything from like world 7 up through 9 dot whatever you're on. And what it actually does is it has a 2-prong approach where it will insert data into a Z table. Let me see if I can actually bring it up. I'm not sure if this one's that configured. Yeah, it should be. So it'll insert data into a Z table, and then what you can do is after it does that, it will call the associated business function to, the associated RPG program to process that Z table and get the data in real time. So we have customers that are on World and they need real-time integration, and they don't want a sleeper job that does it or whatever. They want to know immediately, did the sales order that we put in the Z table actually validate? So what happens is this component will do that. It will go ahead and all of the Z tables that you might be using that will handle that table, validate the data, move it into the real internal JD tables, and then return a result. So did it work? Did it not? What's my new customer number or sales order number, or what got generated? So it gives you kind of cool features in World that you might not have depending on what version you're on. So so that's very nice. If I go up into the what's called the project resources, it's a central place where we manage all of the credentialization. It's the centerpiece, and it's sort of like a wagon wheel type architecture, and it's connecting to everything. So it needs to know how to log into them. So here in this case we have our credentials for our E1 environment. So we set what environment we want to log into, what server, what user and password we're going in with. Whatever user you put here is basically the extent of what you can do in E1. You can't exceed this user's permissions, which means that one, we're abiding by JD security, so all of your auditing and all of your sort of segregation of duties is split up or is kept how it should. But also, of course, we are an Oracle validated integration. It means that we are going in through the correct methods. So there's no weird backdoors. There's nothing to install on JDE. There's no there's nothing shady here. It's all above board, and basically going in and looking like a regular user when it connects to the JD server. If I go to the world side, it's kind of cool. You've got there is a host library that we can install on the iSeries, which allows us to call RPG programs. But it is actually called within the context of a user. So whatever user you put here would be able to do it. Also, you can go in here and configure which one you want to what application for 101Z1, and afterwards we say what job and program we're going to call and what version of it, which gives us some configuration to say we're going to create a customer using this version, which has to be a batch version, of course, not an interactive one. And then it will go ahead and create that one, those customers on the fly if you chose that one. Of course, Salesforce is really easy. It's got just a user and password for Salesforce. So the credentials are all are essentially managed in that resource XML or in that resource repository, which means that it's easier for your IT staff to manage. They don't have to go through code or find out where someone hard-coded in some credentials. It's all centrally managed and easy to keep and easy to have different values for your different environments for test and prod and development. There's a lot of out-of-the-box connectors. Some of them are very application-specific, like the J.D. Edwards ones. For instance, E1 will work with anything from E1, I think 8. We'll work with 8.10 or 8. something, whatever the oldest 8 is, all the way up through 9.1, and I've worked with the 9.1.4 tools release with no problem. So it's basically going to hide the JD versioning within the component. You don't need to write your project any different for any JD version. There's no reason to, unless you want to take advantage of a new table that comes out in a new version. But there's no reason to ever change your Magic project as you upgrade it, which means that you're not going to get into what's called a version lock, where nobody wants to upgrade something because it's going to affect 300 other things. Well, with this loosely coupled integration, we it kind of stops the dominoes from falling right there. You don't have to go and rework everything in your project. There's just some configuration, and the component manages that. It knows how to connect to any different version of E1. Same thing with the world component. So those are have very generic ones as well, such as working with flat files, working with directory scanning in Oracle, HTTP and FTP, and then also web services and XML handling. So what we have is not only specific adapters that will go into the ones that the verticals we're in, the markets we're in, but also ones that will do pretty much anything. So if you want to do like an EDI, or you want to do a flat file, or you want to do an XML in and out, or call a web service, or move something on and off an FTP, it has those. It's just a Swiss knife that happens to have the the knife and the fork and the toothpick, but it also has cooler other things as well, such as SAP adapters and JDE adapters and stuff like that gives you a gateway into those systems that may not have a standard API. So it really helps out in integrating pretty much anything and everything. Glenn, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do, Ryan. We have. Can we import the bill of materials into JDE World from AutoCAD or other engineering software.
Okay. Yeah.
So AutoCAD would just be a standard text file format.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we can certainly do, if you're using an outside application for your product lifecycle management, we can certainly manage your bill of material. I'm doing a project right now to move data from Agile into JD Edwards, so they're using that to manage it. And we're doing that with Magic XPI, so I would see no problem taking the same data source from an AutoCAD file, provided it had enough information to do that.
Okay. And Joe is asking, do you currently have a connector for Oracle Big Machines CPQ? I think that would be our web services connector, actually, that would be used for that. Is that right, Ryan?
I believe so, yes. So more modern applications, we don't necessarily have a specific adapter for because the web service adapter would work for that. So okay. we could look into that for them.
And then almost a similar question, but slightly different, actually. Parul Saraswat asks, says, how much work does it take to create the adapter components for a third-party software that is not out of the box?
I guess it just depends on how complicated the application is and how generic they want the component to be. I've written my own components before. It doesn't take that much work, but then again, if you want something to be, a nice, say, wrapped component with documentation and everything, that could take a little longer. Typically, you don't need to. We have components that do all kinds of generic things, like work with flat files, web services, HTTP, XML. So you probably don't need to write your own component, but let us look at whatever API you want to, and we'll tell you if we can.
All right. Matt Carey asks, in addition to AutoCAD, what about SolidWorks, Solid Edge, and PTC?
I have not worked with those personally, but if they export a bill of material in a data format we can read, or query from a database or something, then certainly. JDE supports, of course, a couple of different ways of working with bill of material. So we can do a direct update to the bill of material if you like. You can also use the ECO module in JDE. So what a lot of people do is, after they release a change from, say, Agile or AutoCAD or whatever it would be, we just deliver that change as an ECO in JDE, and then you can go in and implement that whenever you like after you validate it and stuff like that. Or after a while, if you're comfortable with how it works, you can automate that entirely.
Okay, and Nikhil is asking, what is the hardware requirement for the Magic Software Integration Platform?
The footprint is quite small. You don't need like a big ecosystem with 10 servers and 30 people managing them. No, it's basically will run on a very slim VM, as small as like 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of memory. I mean, you can see probably what I'm using for the demo about just about that. And basically, it can scale. We can scale horizontally and add more servers and more process. But for the vast majority of customers, a single small VM would be sufficient. It runs on Windows. We do have versions that run on Linux and other platforms, but Windows is the most common one we deploy.
Okay, and Greg is asking, is the XPI product using a Windows Microsoft platform or an Oracle SOA platform? And do you still need a BSSV server for JDE Enterprise 1?
Right. We do not. I can say we do not need the BSSV server. You could call that if you like, but a lot of the times the reason we're using business functions is because they didn't purchase the license for the BSSV. Okay.
And as far as Windows or Oracle SOA, it doesn't require the Oracle Fusion middleware, if that's the question, right?
Certainly not, no.
Right. Okay. And then Ray is asking, do you have a connector to AssetWorks? You know Ray from San Diego. Hi, Ray.
Oh, of course, of course. Hi, Ray. I don't know of a connector for AssetWorks, but that's, let us know, and we'll certainly explore it. We could even contact them for you and find out what kind of APIs they support. A lot of times, I mean, nowadays when an application comes out, it's not even considered a serious application unless it has an integration API. So I'm sure there'll be something available. We'll look into that.
Okay. That was actually the last question, Ryan, so I want to thank you very much for your demonstration and for being available to take those questions. Also to all of you who stayed online with us and who joined us today, we do have another webinar starting in 5 minutes on Sugar CRM integration, or if you'd like to look at any of the list of webinars that are upcoming, we have them on the magicsoftware.com website. Under News and Events, Live Webinars, you can register there for any of the upcoming events. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on another Magic Software webinar. If you have any further questions, of course, contact us at info@magicsoftware.com or give us a call at 949-250-1718. Thank you.